And we'll get our recording alert.
Recording in progress.
Hello, I'm Darcy Drager, the chair of the Morris County Democratic Committee, and we are welcoming Councilman Justin Strickland to the screening committee today. I am going to go ahead and kick it off by having our screening committee members in attendance introduce themselves, starting with you, please, Donna.
Hi, Justin. I am the mayor of Morris Township. I am also a member of the Morris Township Democratic Committee and a district rep.
Thank you. Tim.
Hi, Justin, Mayor Tim, Morristown, and I'm also the vice chair of the local Democratic Party.
Thanks, Tim. Christine.
Hi, Justin. Christine Clark. I'm a member of the State Democratic Committee, vice chair of the Jefferson Dems, and a recent state Senate candidate.
And Sandra.
Hi, Justin. I'm Sandra Winter, and I'm a council member in the town of Dover.
Adam Cohen is also on the call. He is running all of the back end electronics. And then we may have two other committee members joining us sort of midstream, but all of our interviews are recorded. And so anyone who is not able to be in attendance today in person will be able to view the recording so they can weigh in and give us their thoughtful feedback on your screening. So I'm going to go ahead and kick it off and just say we're looking forward to having you just tell us a little bit about yourself, what inspired you to run for Congress in CD11, and what's the core message you'd like to bring to voters?
Well, thank you, Darcy, for that question. As you know, I am a councilman in Chatham Borough. I grew up incredibly poor and poverty, and we didn't have a working car for nearly half of my childhood. We, lived paycheck to paycheck. I didn't have health insurance. At 18 years old, I was 100% self-supportive, and I had to make it. So I was fortunate enough to be able to get accepted into Texas A&M University. I went to college there. I, had to take out student loans. I was 100% self-supportive, so, I had to get a job, and I put myself through college. And then after I was done with college, I joined the military. And joining the military was my very first formal and official call to service. I actually had done student government in college as a way to give back to my college community. But this idea of being drawn to help and, be a part of something bigger than myself has always been something that's been at the core of my being. And having grown up in such a humble beginnings, it's always been very important to me to be able to give back and help other people. And I want to tell a quick anecdotal story about what that means to me. And that is when I was in high school, I was in all the regular classes when I started as a freshman. No honors classes, no nothing. And back in those days in Texas, if you weren't in an honors class in your freshman year in high school, you could never be one going forward. And I had a teacher named Betty Jackson who, in the middle of my freshman year, when I was in her English class, she took it upon herself to go to the counselor's office, didn't talk to me, didn't talk to my parents, and got me moved into an honors class mid-year, which totally changed my life. And that has had a ripple effect on me, on everything in my career and my personal life, to help me achieve going from poverty to living all the way in Chatham Borough. And that kind of thing that Betty Jackson did for me, I want to be able to do for other folks. And I've done it before in the military. I deployed direct twice. Once as a platoon leader for a year in Baghdad. Another year, I was on a special forces type team up in Mosul, living with the Iraqi infantry, helping them be in the fight, but also improve their battalion and make their communities better. I learned a lot there that I bring to my everyday life. And then I've worked in the Pentagon. I was a former Pentagon official doing economic development in the Middle East and Afghanistan. And I'm really making those communities and those regions of the world better and safer, and for the regular Iraqi people and the regular Afghan people. Those kinds of activities and being able to be, contributing to communities, that really drives me. I chose to be a councilman so I could be part of my community and contribute to my community. It's just a it's the next step is to do that at a federal level. And I feel that in this race, I am the best qualified person to do so because of all the diverse areas that I have in my background. I'm not a one type of leader. I am a multiple faceted leader with multiple different experiences. And if you look at, all the different candidates, I have a little bit of every single one of them wrapped up into one. And being someone that cares so much about regular people, which is the messaging of our entire campaign, I've shown that by the massive grassroots support that I have. My campaign is a campaign of the people, by the people, and for the people. We have currently over 35 plus members on the campaign team. No one receives a salary. We all do it because we want to help people and trying to make our our communities and our country a better place. And that's our basic message.
Great, thank you so much. Tim, would you like to take the next question, please?
All right, Justin. Policy priorities and so what are 2 or 3 issues you plan to tackle if elected, and what specific solutions would you propose? Please move beyond describing problems and articulate actionable plans.
Well, I absolutely love that question because my campaign is focused on solutions and not problems, just like you talked about. Um, my campaign actually is the only campaign that launched with specific policies, and they're all on our website with detailed plans of what we're going to do. But to answer the question of which 2 to 3 that I'm going to talk about today, uh, one of the pieces of legislation that I'm going to introduce is to fight for the public option. Back in 2009, 2010, we had the ACA, and there was 2 camps of Democrats. There were the Democrats that were like, let's have the public option. And there was the Democrats that were like, well, let's go to the ACA because we can get it passed. And I was the public option guy. And I was told back then, like a lot of Democrats were, that, ACA is the first step. We'll eventually get to the public option. And 15 years later, we've made no progress on that. And one of the things I used to say back in 2009, 2010, in support of the public option, is that we already have a public option in this country, and it's called the VA. The VA is a public option for veterans. And what we need to do is expand the VA program to be a public option for all people. And if we can do that, it'll make it so that, these premiums that we see skyrocketing won't be going up the way they are. And it gives people choice to be able to, say, hey, what can I afford? And versus, what is available to me. So public option is a massive, massive piece of legislation that I'm going to be fighting for. And like I said, more details about it are on my website. Another piece of legislation I'm going to introduce is a child care coupon. Child care is incredibly expensive in 2025, and it continues to get even more expensive. And I believe that if you have 2 working parents or a single working parent who is working hard, who's contributing to the economy, paying taxes, that we should, not have all their income going into, paying for childcare. So what we're going to introduce is like a coupon that they can then take directly to their childcare provider, and that childcare provider then cashes that in with the federal government. It's not a tax credit for an individual because tax credits take a while to get. It's a direct coupon that immediately gives them help and assistance in order to pay for their childcare. And then thus they have extra funds available to, save for a house or pay for a medical bill or, not have to put, a car expense on their credit card. So, and so that they can be able to, you know, get in a better position to achieve all the American dream things that we all seek to achieve. And I just want to say real quick is I know American dream is a very popular trendy thing to say in these campaigns, and it's not just a saying for me. right? Because I lived the American dream from going from poverty to Chatham Borough. And I understand that in order for people to achieve it, you have to introduce specific policy that specifically helps people directly, not indirectly, not trickle down, not tax credits, directly impacts their lives and they can immediately see the value. And that's where the healthcare policy comes in. That's where the child care policy comes in. And the last one I want to talk about real quick from a policy perspective is college education. We are starting, young people out in their lives with massive amounts of debt. And so we're going to introduce a cap on college education at the state level of $5,000 annually for tuition, because it is, in my opinion, criminal that a state-funded taxpayer institution can have a situation where a person leaves their university with over $100,000 debt. And the problem is the fact that college is so expensive. And college is so expensive because of deregulation of loans, student loans in the 90s. And it inflects a bunch of capital into the market. These colleges of all types decide, you know what, we want some of that money. And we have private loans are killing, our young people in starting their lives out. The average, private loan is 9%, you know, and the average student loan payment for someone who has over $100,000 a month, $100,000 of student loan debt is $900 a month. They're not able to save for housing. They're not able to save for starting a family. This cripples people from the very beginning with this loan debt. And because I know that what it's like to have to pay student loan debt, I don't know if I could have achieved what I've achieved in my life had I started with over $100,000. I had $32,000, and that was hard as it was. So we have to tackle all these affordability issues with specific legislation, and we've been deregulating, the federal government and business and financial institutions for the last 40 years, and we are in this mess from an affordability perspective and everyday life for regular people because of that. So we need to go the other way, and start introducing legislation and fighting for policy that actually helps people directly.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Sandra. Yep.
Hi, sorry, I'm here. All right, Justin, my question is about experience and qualifications. How does your background and professional experience prepare you to represent CD11 effectively in Congress?
All right, so I started my career, like I mentioned, in the United States Army. I was an officer, and I was leading 34 people in life and death situations at age 25. And so when it comes to like being in the fight against, the craziness in Washington, D.C. and the Trump administration and all the threats that they throw out at Democrats and just the intense pressure of being in that seat nationally, and I have been under the most direct fire you possibly can. I've been shot at, I've been blown up. Like these things are a lot scarier than having to deal with, the Trump administration. It's tough, but I've been there, I've done that, and I can handle it, and I have a lot of strength and I have the experience to back it up. I would also make a case from a experience perspective. My year with the Iraqi infantry was very, very important because what that situation taught me is this idea of, we can't try to solve problems in like putting a square peg in a round hole. And what I mean by that is that a lot of times we say, this is how it's always been done, or this is how we would do it in our culture or our society. And what we have to do is we have to look at the problem for what it is, and we have to say, well, what is the way to solve this problem that's different so that we can actually get immediate results, but also, if it has a cultural element to it, how would you solve this problem from this person's perspective or this culture's perspective? A quick example of that is when they first started working with Iraqi infantry, I met my interpreters and they all said that their names were like John and William. And it seemed strange to me. And I thought about it. And what I realized was they said their names were John and William because it was a very simple and easy way to break down a barrier because they assumed as an American that Ahmed and Mahmoud, these names would be harder for me to say and be comfortable with. So I went to them the very next day after I met them and I said, I think I understand why you have me call you John and William, but I am in your country and I'll be working with all these different, Iraqi soldiers and community leaders. And so I want you to give me a name that is closest to Justin as you possibly can. And they told me there was a name called Adil, and that means justice. And so I said, that's great. That's perfect. So when you introduce me to everybody for the whole year I'm with you, I want you to introduce me as Adil. And I took that name, and that is how all the Iraqis knew me as a way to start building a relationship and trying to connect with them and to get work done in a faster and most effective way. And that's another example of my experience that would help me in being a successful congressman. I've also lived and worked in Washington, D.C. I lived on Capitol Hill. I was an ex-official working out of the Pentagon. I know that world. I know how it works. And I gained a lot of experience. And I wasn't like a low-level person. I actually was only 2 spots in the org chart away from the Secretary of Defense. So it was a very senior position doing the economic development in the Middle East and Afghanistan. I've also worked for 3 Fortune 100 companies, and in those roles, they're all management roles, and they're diverse. It's not the same type of industry. So this idea of having diverse experiences in management and leadership in order to achieve missions and goals and provide value, I have that. And then lastly, from a qualifications perspective, I have served as a councilman in Chatham Borough, and so I do have an understanding of New Jersey government. I understand the challenges that municipalities face, and it's not something that I'm going to have to learn while I become a congressman. Like I know it, and I can bring immediate value on day one in order to help the other leaders in the district achieve good things for their residents.
Great, thank you. Christine.
Hi, Justin. So I get to ask you about your electability and your campaign strategy. Specifically, what is your strategy to win this seat in the special election, including outreach to key voter groups in the district?
Yeah, so I think that everyone would agree that a compressed, 75-day primary and a 70-day general is a very unique situation. And it adds even more uniqueness when you throw its Thanksgiving and Christmas and the time of year. And so I believe that the strategies that are needed are twofold. I do think that there are certain tried and true strategies that are effective no matter what, okay? But you can't rely on those unless you have to come up with different strategies in order to boost name recognition and to, get your message out of why, you would be the best, person to represent the district. And I think that I'm doing both of those things. From an Orthodox perspective, as some of you may have seen, I have, my people on my team doing the bridges, and we're basically putting our message on bridges so people can see our name. We are also doing the regular way you would do it, where we hit doors when we got our signatures, and we were making sure that we talked to voters directly, knocking on the doors. I know that there's the questionnaire that I'm going to send you guys after this, and it actually goes into a lot more detail of all the different strategy points that we're going to employ. But from a strategy perspective, I think a lesson that my parents taught me as a young poor kid, and that is nothing great was ever achieved by doing what everybody else is doing. And so I think in order to be able to reach voters, we have to do things differently, and we have to truly meet them where they're at. And if that means standing on the side of the road with a sign, that means standing on the road with a sign. But in order to truly get the message out, I think regular people have to get the message out that we are going to help regular people. And that's why I have a significant grassroots team. I know grassroots is another very, very trendy word that a lot of the candidates are using. I would make a case that that they may not be using it properly at times, but I truly am the true grassroots candidate because I've been with the grassroots people, on the side of the roads, on the bridges, protesting with them, being in the trenches. And I'm the only elected official that has been doing that, the only one. And I've got a team full of grassroots people, and I don't think you get much more grassroots than when you have 35 plus people working for free. And like the fact that they believe in the message and they're working hard, and we have an infrastructure set up that is that is just as good as all the campaigns out there, that that shows that the grassroots is powerful, and it's the grassroots that's going to truly get our message out and get us become the nominee on February 5th.
Thank you. Over to you, Donna.
Hi, Justin.
Hey, Donna.
How are you? But this question is on leadership and collaboration. Congress requires negotiation and coalition building. Can you give an example from your career where you successfully worked across differences to achieve a goal?
Absolutely. So my job actually in the private sector is always doing that because I'm always I don't have direct reports all the time. I have some people that are on my team, but I have to work with different pieces of the organization in order to get the work done. But you want a specific example. So working with different groups to get something done. So I want to go back to the Iraqi army because the Iraqi army is a organization where I was as an officer in the American Army was one of 11 people living with them. And I'm not a member of their military. I'm an advisor. And so having to build coalitions and think of ways to get things done when they don't have to listen to me, you know, that is the essence of what I had to do on a daily basis. And so in the Iraqi army, as you can probably imagine, um, the there's a lot of potential corruption by the leadership. They're trying to steal a lot of money, but the key is making sure they don't steal so much money that um, they that they don't like diminish the services. And so I had this battalion commander who was really, really bad at stealing money, so much so that he would steal the money to buy the food for the soldiers, and he would steal money to, for the fuel for the vehicles. And so what I realized, I had to make sure that in order for the Iraqi army to be successful, I had to make sure that they stole less so that, these soldiers had more money to take home from their families. And if they have more money to take their families, they can give it to their aunts and uncles and they can eat and they can, they don't have to worry about, insurgents coming into their neighborhoods with bombs, with cash and saying, here, take this money because I need it to eat. And then the bombs are there and it's a more dangerous environment. So what I did is one, I learned the culture very well and how I'm going to influence um, how I would influence these Iraqi leaders to not steal money. And one of the things I learned by living with the Iraqis is that you would go into someone's office, be it a battalion commander or a police chief or a local elected official, and there'd always be a picture of somebody on their desk that was like very important or noteworthy. And they would always tell you, "Oh, this is my friend. This is somebody I worked with," and it was somebody with significance. So you'd be like, "Oh." They know somebody important. They know somebody, that is famous. So it shows that they have strength and they have influence over their environment. Well, after having gone to at least a half dozen Iraqi leaders and them doing this the same little spiel to me about, look at my friend, I've worked with this person and pointing out their picture, I realized that, you know what, I think it's just a photo op and it's just, it's not really not really super real. But I thought, you know what? I need to be able to influence this corrupt Iraqi battalion commander in order to make sure he feeds his soldiers. So what I did is I wrote letters to politicians in the United States and said, "Hi, my name is Captain Strickland. I live and work with the Iraqi infantry. Can you please send me an autographed 8 by 10 photo of yourself?" And sure enough, I got one in the mail, and it was from one of my heroes as Jimmy Carter. So I had this Jimmy Carter photo that said "Best wishes, Justin Strickland, Jimmy Carter." And I took it into the battalion commander's office, and I said, "Hey, I got some mail today from a friend of mine in the United States." And he didn't think much of it at first. And I pulled the picture out and I said, "My friend Jimmy here sent me this photo." And now his eyes perk up because he can see the picture, he can see the autograph, he sees the mail. And I said to him, I told Jimmy that when I got this photo, that I would take a picture of you, me, and the photograph and send it back to him so he knows I got it because it's real hard to get mail in Iraq. And now this battalion commander, because he's not sure, does he really know Jimmy Carter? Is he telling Jimmy Carter, like, I'm stealing the money and I'm not feeding soldiers? Is that going to affect my position to be able to still be the battalion commander? He was unsure. And so the picture and the autograph did exactly what I hoped it would do because as a result, those soldiers didn't miss a single meal for 5 weeks. And I felt that was a really good way to be able to look at the environment I was in and say, how can I be effective in this environment? This might not be the regular environment that I would be in, but how do I become effective in this environment? How do I get results in this environment? How do I help people in this environment? How do I make lives better for all these people I'm not even know? So like the soldiers got more food, they got more money in their pockets, and that's helping an unknown number of people and their family I'm never going to meet. And so I think it's a great example of like how I approach problems and how I'm going to influence and how I'm going to like make it happen for the American people.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I have one more question, and that's on party building. Describe your efforts to help elect Democrats at the local, state, and federal level.
Yeah, so I'm sure everyone saw my social media. I was out there in force, trying to help get Mikey elected this last cycle. So first and foremost, I am always going to be out there helping local electeds as well. I, some of you guys probably know I have always in everybody's communities, trying to, do my part to help community build on all the reorgs that happen every year. I think with the exception of maybe Amalia, I've been to more reorgs than anybody in any other person that's a Dem elected in the last 2 years. I have, when I ran for county commissioner, I knocked doors for all the candidates on the ballot, up and down the ballot, and try to get them elected. I donate to campaigns. I do everything I can to help the party get built. And I do think that the other thing I do is I'm always trying to make sure everyone remembers that we're all on the same team. And, we may have our differences, we may have our different perspectives, but we're all on the same team. And we have to stick together and we have to make sure we win all elections. And we do so. And when we do so, it's our opportunity to help people. And we need to focus after we get elected on helping people and introducing specific policies that we can fight for to help people because it's no good to get elected if we're not doing anything to help people.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Justin. Now we have 3 questions that are our candidate-specific questions. And the first one is, and actually this is asked of everybody, should you lose the special election primary, do you plan to still pursue the seat in the regular election cycle?
I'll be 100% honest with you. I don't know the answer to that because I'm a person that's being, I'm wanting to serve. And, if we continue to grow the grassroots that we've been growing and the people want me to run, then maybe I will run. I don't know. There's a lot to happen between now and February 5th. There's a lot of data points to consider. But at the end of the day, the most important thing I'm focused on is helping people and making sure their lives are better. And if I know that that's going to happen, that's all I really care about. I care about making sure that people, regular people's lives are going to be made better by the person who's sitting in the seat. And that's what my focus is.
Excellent, thank you. This is a question for any of our candidates who is a sitting elected official. Which legislation were you a sponsor, lead sponsor? What are you most proud of that you've worked on?
So what's the thing I'm most proud of I've worked on
Yeah,
in
like
my
if you've sponsored any sort of legislation or if you've like been working on getting something through council or that sort of thing, what do you think, what do you like the most that you've worked on?
Yeah, I mean, I can say a council example if that's what you guys want, but I would tell you
Sure.
from my career perspective, though, like I feel to some extent, some of my council stuff is smaller, than my other stuff. So like when I worked out of the Pentagon, there's some things I've worked on and accomplished that are at a much broader, international level of accomplishment that I'm incredibly proud of, and if it's okay, I can
Yeah,
share some of those
please.
things.
That'd be great.
Okay, great. Um, so part of the economic development that when I say I did economic development, people always say, "What does it exactly mean, Justin?" Um, what that means is we did programs and initiatives in Iraq and Afghanistan that directly impacted their economies. I worked significantly on the banking and financial networks side of the economic development, and little things that we did were like we set up electronic funds transfers for those countries. Iraq and Afghanistan did not have EFT established prior to my group going in there and creating that for them. So that's a massive piece for their economy and their banking system because what that does is that props up the entire banking system in those countries because it gives a certain level of, security, right? That money is always there. And then those banks then can take that money and, they can loan money out. And there's a certain level of, of knowing that this money's coming this month and this money's coming next month, and when you have a strong financial banking system, that naturally makes security better in a developing country. So setting up EFT for that country was absolutely paramount to making sure that America could leave those countries because that way it props up the economy. So that was a massive thing we did that I was a part of along the lines of um, more financial stuff. I was a key person in establishing the relationship between Citibank and Afghan International Bank in Afghanistan. There was no international banking relationships with any of the Afghan banks with anyone outside Afghanistan. And that's so significant because again, when you have a relationship with a bank like Citibank, that allows more investment. It allows, folks to have more, confidence. It mitigates financial risk, and it allows Afghanistan to be in a better spot in order to, build their economy. So those are just two examples of my work that I'm really proud of because I think it really speaks directly to the idea of when you have a good economy, you're able to help a broad base of people and it helps regular Iraqis, it helped regular Afghans, and it allows them to be able to like have a better life than they were having. And that's the kind of, thing that I really am passionate about, and that's why it's a cornerstone to my campaign.
Excellent, thank you. That was great. The last question, before we go to our lightning round is, can you please describe a situation where you strongly disagreed with colleagues or staff on a local government issue? How did you work through that disagreement and what did you learn from the experience?
Well, the way that I think it's very important to when you have a disagreement with somebody, right? I think it's very important to not like have it be super big and out in the open. You need to be able to solve your problems and try to maintain the relationship with the folks, one-on-one, behind closed doors. So you don't really, make it a bigger thing than it needs to be, because I think that has a potential to, damage future situations you may have with them, right?
Mhm.
And so, when you talk about approach, if I disagree on something, my approach is always to, try to handle it in the background, right? Try to talk one-on-one, try to talk in a group, maintain that like trust of like, hey, what we're talking about stays between us. I'm not telling anybody else. This is just we're talking here, you know? And I absolutely want to always do that. I have I feel like most importantly though, at the end of the day, my responsibility is to the voters and the people that elected me. And so I think I need to be a champion for those folks. And if I have a large significant portion of the community who, believe a certain thing, I do feel it's my responsibility to honor their commitment to voting for me, and you know and making sure that they know that I'm standing up for them. So that happened in the affordable housing round in June, in which I worked really hard behind the scenes with my fellow electeds to try to make sure we could come up with a small compromise where the public could feel like they were included in the decision. I tried to make it so that we could say to the public, "Hey, your voice was heard. You didn't get exactly what you wanted, but we bent a little tiny bit." And I thought that from a democracy perspective, it's good to have more people involved in democracy. And we had over 1,000 people in Chatham Borough, little tiny Chatham Borough, say they wanted to be involved and have a voice. And I thought that it'd be best if we included that voice, because that's what democracy is about. And that's what we should do, especially if they want to be involved. And if you guys are familiar with the book Bowling Alone, if you're familiar with, the documentary Join or Die, you know that, democracies die when people aren't engaged. And when you don't take into account the feedback of so many people and 1,000 people, you're hurting democracy. And I think that in that case where I disagree with my colleagues on that issue, um, I think I was standing up for democracy and I was standing up for the people. And I did everything I could behind the scenes, multiple conversations, say, let's tweak it slightly, offered solutions. And my colleagues chose not to do that. And so I voted differently than they did. And I, I think personally, I think it required, the moral courage, because, I knew that they weren't going to be happy that I voted differently than they did. But I think it's my responsibility is to do what's right, to fight for what I think is right, and to stand strong with the beliefs that, we as Democrats have to, do everything we can, even at a municipal level, to encourage democracy, civic engagement, and I think that I did that in my vote.
Excellent. Thank you. All right. We are now on to our lightning round. Christine, if you would take it from here.
Thank you. Hi, Justin. These are questions we just need to ask to make sure that our candidates come through aligned on our values. These are yes and no questions. So
Okay.
the first one is, do you support access to affordable health care for all, including protections for pre-existing conditions?
Yes.
Great. Do you support policies that promote racial, gender, and LGBTQ plus equity?
Yes.
Great. Do you support policies to address climate change and expand clean energy?
Yes.
Do you support reproductive rights, including a woman's right to choose?
Yes.
Do you support protecting and expanding voting rights?
Yes.
Do you support comprehensive immigration reform, including a pathway to citizenship for undocumented immigrants?
Yes.
Great, thank you.
Excellent. Before I open up the floor to any other additional questions, John Aiden and Sherry Seffer are not with us today, but they both have two questions that they usually ask during this round, and so I'm asking them on behalf of them. The first one is Sherry, and her question is, when you're in Congress, what is a Morris County specific issue that you would work to support, develop, address?
Well, I think in general, what we have in Morris County is a big affordability issue in general. And like I've mentioned previously on my website, all my policy that is there, which is in depth, speaks to affordability. But I think one of the biggest issues in Morris County regarding affordability is housing. Housing is incredibly expensive in Morris County. And so one of the key policy positions that we have that I'm going to be introducing legislation on is we're going to be introducing legislation to create a federal program that is similar to the VA loan program, in which you don't have to put 20% down on a home. Because right now, if you don't put 20% down on a home, you have to pay PMI. And that PMI can be rather expensive. And that just is added money onto your mortgage and money that you're never going to get back. And so if you don't have to put 20% down for a home loan and it's backed by the federal government, you don't have to pay PMI. So, for example, if the average, house in Morris County is $600,000 to $650,000, and you don't put 20% down, PMI is probably going to cost you somewhere around between $400 a month on top of your mortgage. So people don't want to just burn that money. And so in order to put down 20%, you're going to have, $150,000, close to that to be able to even buy a house. And with the cost of college and the cost of childcare and the cost of countless other things, you're never going to be able to save that money up and be able to afford to buy a house in Morris County. So this program will open up the opportunity for people to buy houses that didn't have the ability to buy houses before because the pathway is more affordable. And on the flip side, part of our housing policy as well is we're going to introduce legislation that makes it, illegal for hedge funds to buy up single family homes. Single family homes should be exactly what they're called, single family. So, we're going to make it illegal so you can't buy that and let them sit empty. That'll also open up the supply. In addition, we're going to tax significantly folks who have the money to buy extra houses and just let them sit empty because they're going to buy them as an investment. We're going to tax those people because, again, a single family home is meant for a single family, not for someone to just hold on to and as an investment. So both those two things are going to open up the supply, which which would drive the overall, cost of houses down as well, because more supply, thus, that it's cheaper. So those are the two things that those are the items that we would do for Morris County that I think would directly help affordability and help regular people's lives.
Excellent, thank you. And John Aiden has a wonderful question, and he asks, campaigning it can be very draining. It's a big lift. It requires a lot of time and attention and effort. So, what part of this process makes you happy? What do you enjoy about it?
My favorite part about it is getting to be with the people and talking with voters and just being out there, listening to them and knowing that like I'm in a position to be able to help them. That's what makes me happy. There's a lot of, administrative stuff that is behind the scenes that I'm involved in, but the true happiness is being able to be with the voters and being out there and talking with folks, hearing about their lives, and in hearing about like what I can potentially do to help. Because one of the things that's very important to me, as an elected official in Chatham Borough and will be as an elected official, as a congressman, is making myself available and seeking out people, right? I think one of the great things that Andy Kim does is he does the most town halls of anybody in New Jersey, or he did as a congressman. I love that. And like that's the kind of congressman I'm going to be. I'm going to be out there with the people in the same way that I'm out there on the side of the road on the bridges, in the protests, I'm with them, and that's what really gets me a lot of happiness, and it motivates me and gives me energy. And that's the kind of representative I'm going to be, is be with the people to help the people.
Excellent, thank you. All right, I will ask if there are any follow-up questions or any clarifications from anyone on the screening committee. Going once, going twice. All right, Justin, what would you like to close with? What final thought would you like to leave us with?
Well, I'd like to leave you guys with the idea that, this is the special election, right? And it's a very unique situation we find all ourselves in. And I know that everyone, has a lot coming at them all at once. And I know that everyone's doing their absolute best to make sure that, everyone has a voice and everyone has the information to make a good decision. And I want everyone to know that I greatly appreciate that. And I know you guys are giving your Saturday up during the holiday season, and I appreciate that as well. Um, but from a voter's perspective, I do think that we are at a time in our history that is very, very important who we send to Washington, D.C. I think there are too many millionaires in Washington, D.C. We have over 50% of the members of Congress who are millionaires. And I think that at this stage, we got to say, if you're a millionaire, you're not going to go to Congress because you don't understand what it's like to be a regular person. I think we're also in a unique position where what we find right now in the Democratic Party in DC is the focus is just keep our seats. We can't do much. We can't do much until we have the majority. And I don't like that mindset. I don't like what just happened with the shutdown. We shut the DC Democrats shut down Washington, DC because they were saying they're trying to help regular people in their health care. And the moment that the election was over on November 4th, we pivoted right to the election of 2026. And I think that's a problem. And we need folks in DC who care more about people and doing things for the people than getting elected. And I back that up by having signed a term limits pledge. I worked with the National Term Limits Organization and signed their pledge to support a constitutional amendment to introduce term limits for all members of Congress. We need Congress people to go to Washington to work and not just, be on the defense. We need to be on the offense. And what we do by being on the offense is not being a bully. It's not, being a political celebrity. Being on the offense is introducing and fighting for actual policy and programs that affect and help people. Because I believe the American people are smart enough and wise enough to say, you know what? The Democrats made my life better. And that's why I'm going to support Democrats in the future. And that's why I also applaud Mikey Sherrill for all her detailed policy that she's going to be working on as governor, because these are things that are going to help people's lives. And we need to stop focusing on just holding our seats. We hold our seats by actually telling voters specifically what we're going to do and what we're going to work on. And as your congressman and as a congressman for everyone in New Jersey's 11th district, I'm going to work and fight and do everything I can to make life better for regular people.
Excellent. Councilman Strickland, thank you so much for joining us today. We appreciate your thoughts and the perspectives that you've shared with us. And we look forward to seeing you at the nominating convention next Sunday on the 14th.
Thank you so much. I appreciate your time.
Okay, have a good day.
Bye.